I always suspected my sister despised me. What I never anticipated was how methodically she'd act on that hatred, or that she'd wrap her cruelest move in silver paper and slide it across a birthday dinner table with a smile. "Open it," Vanessa said, her voice honeyed with barely concealed delight. The box sat in front of me like a trap I hadn't yet stepped into. Around the table, forks had gone still. My mother, Margaret, pressed her wine glass to her lips without drinking. The chandelier above us buzzed faintly, the only sound willing to fill the silence. Inside the box was a DNA testing kit. Vanessa leaned forward, laughter threading through her words. "Maybe this will finally explain why you've always felt like someone else's mistake dumped in the wrong family." I heard my mother inhale sharply. I heard my own heartbeat in my ears. But what I remember most clearly is not the humiliation. It was the look on my mother's face. Not shock, not outrage, something far worse. Recognition. She already knew what Vanessa had just said out loud. Growing up a Calloway in Sacramento meant learning, early, to disappear. Our house was large and well-furnished, the kind of home neighbors complimented and strangers envied. Inside, it ran on a different currency entirely: attention and who was owed it. That was always Vanessa. She had a gravitational pull that required no effort, the loudest laugh in any room, the story that always topped yours. My mother, Margaret, orbited her gladly. I was the other daughter, the one who got straight A's and heard, "That's wonderful, sweetheart," delivered in the same tone as "pass the salt." The one who learned to need less so she'd be disappointed less. My father, Robert Calloway, was the exception. He was a quiet man, thoughtful in a way that didn't announce itself. He never said much, but what he said mattered. He came to every school event I had, always sitting in the third row, always with the same proud nod when my name was called. I thought, for a long time, that was just who he was: steady, present, mine. He died 18 months before that birthday dinner. Heart failure, sudden and unforgiving. And the house that had always been cold became even colder once his quiet warmth was gone. Margaret called 3 months after the funeral to insist on a birthday dinner. Her voice on the phone was too smooth, too performed, like someone delivering lines they'd rehearsed in the bathroom mirror. Something felt staged. I told myself I was being paranoid, packed a bag, and drove up from my apartment in San Jose. When I walked through the front door, the house smelled of lemon polish and the ghost of someone I missed terribly. Vanessa was already at the kitchen table, flipping through a travel magazine, her skin bronzed from a recent vacation, barely acknowledging my arrival. My mother moved around the kitchen with a glass of wine perpetually in hand, her laughter too frequent, too thin. Dinner was theater. Vanessa performed all evening: her renovation plans, her husband's promotion, an upcoming trip to Portugal. My mother laughed at every punchline. When I spoke, conversation resumed around me like water closing over a stone. At one point, Vanessa turned to me with wide, curious eyes. "So, Selena, still at that same company in San Jose?" Before I could answer, she was already launching into another story about herself. It hadn't been a question. It had been a reminder. You are scenery here. But beneath all of it, I sensed something else. Vanessa kept glancing toward the kitchen, then toward me, with a look I couldn't name at the time. Anticipation. The look of someone counting down. When my mother returned with a plain, store-bought cake, Vanessa stood suddenly, dramatically, and reached beneath her chair for a glossy wrapped box. "I brought something for Selena," she announced, drawing every eye in the room. "Something I think she'll find very enlightening." My mother's face went ash gray. "Vanessa..." But Vanessa was already sliding the box across the table toward me, her smile a razor's edge. "Go on. Open it." I peeled back the wrapping slowly, a strange stillness settling over my hands. Inside was the DNA kit. The room went quiet except for the refrigerator's hum. "Maybe," Vanessa said softly, savoring every syllable, "this will explain why you've always felt like someone else's mistake dumped in the wrong family." My mother flinched. I saw it. I cataloged it. And then I excused myself to the bathroom, sat on the closed lid of the toilet, and breathed. That night, in my childhood bedroom, the walls still painted the dusty sage green I'd chosen at 16, I searched through old boxes. I'm not sure what I was looking for. Proof of my own history, maybe. Something that made me real. At the back of my closet, tucked behind a stack of old yearbooks, I found an envelope I didn't recognize. The dust around it had been recently disturbed. Inside was a photograph, a younger version of my mother, holding an infant, standing beside a man I had never seen before. He was tall, dark-haired, his hand resting protectively on her shoulder. On the back, in my mother's handwriting, 2 words: "Forgive me." I photographed everything with my phone. My hands were steady in a way the rest of me wasn't. Then I looked at the DNA kit Vanessa had gift-wrapped and delivered to me like a verdict. She had wanted me to take it. She had practically handed me the rope and pointed to the cliff. Fine. I mailed it the next morning, not because Vanessa had wanted me to, but because I needed to understand what truth she had been so hungry to weaponize. The results arrived on a quiet Tuesday, 5 weeks later. I was at my desk, half distracted by a spreadsheet, when the notification appeared on my phone. No biological relationship detected with the Calloway family line. Suggested match? Hartman lineage. I read it 3 times. Then I sat very still and let the room rearrange itself around me. It didn't shatter me the way I had feared. It felt, strangely, like confirmation of something I had always half known but never allowed myself to name. I had always been a guest in that house, never quite a daughter. This was just the receipt. What happened next shook me more than the results themselves. I sent a screenshot to the family group chat with a single, calm message. "Does anyone want to explain this?" My phone rang within 2 minutes. My mother, crying, her voice cracking under the weight of decades. "Selena, sweetheart, please delete that. You don't understand. This was a long time ago. We moved past it. Please." She never apologized. She never addressed the years I'd spent feeling like a burden in her own home, invisible in rooms she controlled. She only begged me to bury it again, to make her comfortable once more. Vanessa didn't call. She texted 4 words. "Well, now you know." That night, I called her. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice laced with theatrical impatience, as though I were interrupting something important. "Why, Vanessa?" I asked. "Why do this? Why now?" A soft laugh, cold as a tile floor in January. "Because I've known this secret for 20 years, Selena. Because Mom owed me for carrying it. Because you've spent your whole life playing the quiet, overlooked victim, and now the right people will finally get what they deserve." She hung up before I could respond. I sat with those words for a long time. The right people will finally get what they deserve. She wasn't just trying to humiliate me. She was positioning herself. She was building something. I started asking questions the next morning, slowly, carefully, the way you might test ice before stepping onto a frozen lake. I reached out to old family friends, neighbors who had known my parents before Vanessa and I were born, distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. What came back chilled me. Vanessa had been meeting with estate lawyers for months. She'd been making comments to people about upcoming changes to the family's finances, speaking as though my father's estate was already hers to administer. She hadn't just exposed a secret at that dinner table. She'd been engineering a takeover. I needed help, real help, the kind my father, who'd always told me to find the right expert and trust them, would have insisted on. So I hired an attorney named Claire Moss, someone recommended for her work in contested inheritance cases. I brought her everything: The DNA results, the photograph, the screenshot of Vanessa's texts, the notes I'd made from my conversations with neighbors. Claire listened without interrupting, her pen moving steadily across a legal pad. When I finished, she looked up. "Your instincts are correct," she said. "Someone has been actively working to erase you from this estate, and they weren't subtle about it." 3 days later, my father's longtime estate attorney, a measured, silver-haired man named Gerald Pratt, called and asked me to come to his office. His tone was careful, formal in a way that suggested what he was about to share carried significant weight. "Your father left instructions for a will reading to be triggered under specific circumstances," he told me. "Those circumstances have now been met. I want you to be prepared for what you're going to hear." Prepared. As if preparation were possible for what came next. Denver was cold the morning of the reading. Not the clean cold of winter, but something heavier, the kind that settles in your chest. Claire and I arrived early. The building was downtown, all dark wood and floor-to-ceiling glass, the kind of space designed to make truths feel permanent. We took seats near the window. Claire leaned close and murmured, "Observe everything. Only speak when I indicate." Her calm was the only thing that kept mine intact. My mother arrived looking hollowed out, her hair hastily pinned, her purse clutched in both hands like a life jacket. She sat at the far end of the table without looking at me. Then Vanessa arrived, heels clicking sharply against the marble floor, cream suit perfectly tailored, expression radiating the quiet confidence of someone who believes the outcome has already been decided. She'd brought her own attorney, a man I recognized from billboard ads, known for aggressive estate litigation. She caught my eye and smiled, one corner lifted higher than the other, the smile of someone who thinks they've already won. Gerald Pratt entered last, carrying a thick folder. He moved with the deliberateness of someone who understood the gravity of what he was about to do. He rested a hand on the folder, looked at each of us in turn, and spoke. Robert Calloway, anticipated complications when drafting these instructions. What I am about to share reflects his full and informed intentions. I ask that everyone remain seated until I have finished reading. Vanessa's smile flickered, just slightly. Pratt opened the folder. "I, Robert Allen Calloway, declare this my final will and testament. I leave 70% of my estate, including the family home, all investment accounts, and associated assets, to my daughter, Selena Calloway." The silence that followed was absolute. Vanessa rose from her chair. "She is not his daughter. We have DNA proof. She has no legal—" Pratt raised one hand. "Please sit. There is more." She sat, jaw clenched so tightly I could see the muscle working beneath her cheek. "I have known since Selena was 2 years old that she is not my biological child. I chose to raise her regardless. I choose to leave her my legacy because she, alone, has proven worthy of it. This decision requires no further justification from anyone." My mother closed her eyes. Pratt was not finished. 8 months before his death, my father had hired a private investigator. The investigator had documented everything. Vanessa's repeated attempts to pressure her father into altering his will, unauthorized withdrawals totaling $50,000 from his accounts during his illness, consultations with 3 separate estate attorneys, and the investigator had documented the purchase and gift wrapping of a DNA testing kit mailed to Vanessa's home address. Vanessa's complexion went gray. "There is one more item," Pratt said. He produced a smaller envelope, handwritten, addressed to Vanessa. He unfolded it and read aloud, "Vanessa, I know what you have been planning. I watched you try to manipulate your mother, and I hoped you would choose differently. These consequences are entirely your own making." A sound came out of Vanessa, something between a gasp and a snarl. Her attorney leaned toward her sharply and whispered, "Do not contest this. There is a no contest clause. You will lose everything." But she was already unraveling. "This is fraud," she spat. Selena manipulated him. She influenced a dying man. This will should be... Claire stood. Her voice was quiet and absolutely certain. The will explicitly acknowledges Selena's parentage and documents Mr. Calloway's reasoning in detail. Any contest would trigger the no contest clause, which includes repayment of all outstanding loans to the estate, approximately $200,000. Vanessa's face twisted. That wasn't a loan. He gave me that money. Not according to estate records, Pratt replied, unmoved. My mother finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. Vanessa, stop. But Vanessa couldn't stop. Years of certainty, entitlement, and unchecked resentment collided all at once. This should be mine, she said, voice shaking. All of it. I'm the real daughter. I'm the one who was always here. I'm the one who... I stood slowly. You weren't here, Vanessa. You were controlling. You were threatening. You built your entire position in this family on secrets you never earned and wounds you kept open on purpose. She turned toward me, eyes wide and wild. You don't deserve any of... Pratt spoke gently over her. There is one more item, a personal letter from Mr. Calloway, addressed to Selena. He handed me a small envelope. I opened it with steady hands. Selena, you spent your life believing you were invisible in this family. You were not. I saw your strength every single day. I saw your kindness, your patience, your integrity when no one was watching and you had no reason to perform. You were my daughter not by blood, but by every choice I made from the moment I held you. I leave you my legacy with absolute certainty that you will honor it. My vision blurred. When I looked up, I understood something clearly. This was not my victory. It was something my father had built quietly, deliberately, over years. Protection he had constructed while I had no idea I needed it. The legal fallout came quickly. Vanessa's attorney withdrew his representation the following morning. When she attempted to contest the will regardless, the judge dismissed it within the hour. The no contest clause held. Her inheritance dissolved. The $200,000 in outstanding loans converted to personal debt owed back to the estate. The $50,000 in unauthorized withdrawals were flagged for further review. She had 1 year to repay it or face additional legal proceedings. For the first time in my memory, Vanessa looked small. Not humbled, she wasn't capable of that, not yet. Just cornered, finally, by consequences she had always managed to outrun. My mother came to see me in San Jose a week later. She sat on my couch with her hands folded and told me everything. The truth about my biological father, an agreement made in desperation decades ago, the guilt she had carried and never once offered to share with me. I listened without interrupting, but I didn't reach for her. Some wounds ask for distance before they can ask for closeness. I want to make things right, she said. I believe you, I told her, but making things right starts with letting me live without carrying your secrets. In the months that followed, I stepped away from Sacramento entirely. I managed the estate with Claire's help, settled the accounts, made the decisions that needed making. And then, for the first time in my life, I made a choice purely for myself. I moved to a small coastal town in northern Oregon, where the mornings are gray and quiet, and the ocean doesn't care who your father was. Some endings don't arrive with noise. They arrive as a choice. To stop shrinking, to stop apologizing for existing, to finally take up a space you were always entitled to. If you've ever been the overlooked one, the one who disappeared into corners so others wouldn't sigh, know this. Someone always sees you, even when you can't feel it. And sometimes they leave you proof.